Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're doing something a bit different. We've got this detailed editorial report, basically the global news slate for November 6th, 2025.
Right. And our job, for you listening, isn't just to read the headlines.
No, not at all. We're going deeper. We want to pull out the really critical facts, policy crises, big international shifts, tech stuff.
And crucially, we're also going to look at how this information gets put together, how it's vetted, how it's framed for, well, clarity and balance. It's kind of a look behind the curtain of high-volume news.
Exactly. So let's dive right in with North America, because there's this policy gridlock that's frankly gone on way too long and is now causing real operational problems.
Yeah, the U.S. federal funding impasse, it just hit 37 days.
A record, right, 37 days.
It is. And the scary part is how fast that political problem turns into, well, a real systemic risk for everyday people. Hitting day 37 wasn't just symbolic. It forced the FAA, the Federal Aviation Administration, to act.
And act drastically. They put in place this unprecedented 10% cut in air traffic.
10%. Across 40 of the busiest markets, too. Think New York, Chicago, L.A.
Yeah, the big hubs. And this isn't just, flights being delayed a bit.
No, absolutely not. The core reason, and the source material is really clear on this, is that essential people, especially air traffic controllers, are working without pay.
Which leads to fatigue, immense pressure.
Exactly. So cutting flights is basically the only lever they have left to keep things safe. It's why you see airlines like Air Canada, Porter Airlines already offering fee-free rebooking. They know delays are pretty much baked in now.
And the fallout from these fiscal lapses, it stretches way beyond the airports, doesn't it?
Oh, definitely. We're seeing major ripples in healthcare access,
Yeah.
specifically hitting Medicare patients who use telehealth.
How so?
Well, it highlights a fundamental issue. When you have an impasse like this, the bureaucratic cogs that handle payments just seize up.
Right.
So reports are coming in that Medicare patients are suddenly having real trouble getting reimbursed for telehealth.
Which means they have to pay up front or go in person.
Exactly. Pay up front, which many can't afford, or switch to in-person appointments, which can be a logistical nightmare, or just financially out of reach for some.
That's a huge barrier, especially for people in rural areas or those managing chronic conditions. It just destabilizes things.
It really does. And at the same time, you've got small business owners getting increasingly worried about Affordable Care Act premiums, which keep rising. So the whole policy environment feels pretty shaky right now, hitting essential services and small businesses simultaneously.
Okay, so while all that pressure is building on the government side, let's pivot quite hard, actually, to technology. Because Lockheed Martin just announced something potentially big, StarDAWS.
Yeah, StartOS. This is interesting because it tackles maybe the single biggest headache in rolling out AI on a massive scale: fragmentation.
Meaning all the different AI systems don't talk to each other.
Pretty much. For years, big organizations, think government agencies or huge companies, have built up all these separate, siloed AI tools.
Yeah.
StarAvi is designed to be the layer that connects them, legacy systems, new systems, so they can actually work together, collaborate.
Like an operating system for AI collaboration, and it has those three parts, right? The SDK for developers.
Right, Star SDK, then Star.io for the actual connectivity, making sure data flows between systems.
And Star.io for the user interface, letting people visualize what's happening.
It's a full package.
Yeah.
And while, yes, it was developed with U.S. national security needs in mind, making their operations more effective, the core idea, this architecture for unifying complex AI systems, that has huge potential.
You mean commercial potential?
Absolutely. There's massive interest already. This could really set the standard for how large private companies implement AI in a cohesive way, moving beyond just isolated projects.
Okay, let's shift our focus now beyond North America to the global stage. Starting with climate, because there are some really big numbers coming out of COP30.
Yeah, the Leaders Summit just opened in Belém, Brazil. And the opening announcement from UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, it was pretty stunning.
What did he say?
He confirmed that institutional investors think big pension funds, sovereign wealth funds, they committed a record $2 trillion to clean energy in 2024 alone.
2 trillion. That's a staggering number.
It is. But here's the kicker, the part that really changes the game. That $2 trillion exceeded the money going into fossil fuels by $800 billion.
Wow, so clean energy investment is actually bigger now.
Significantly bigger.
Yeah.
It's not just a trend anymore. It's the dominant direction of global capital. It confirms that solar and wind aren't just viable. They're the cheapest and fastest growing power sources globally.
And the geopolitical implications of that are huge.
Immense. It boosts energy security, especially for developing nations, and starts to shift the balance of power away from traditional fossil fuel economies. It could lead to more stable energy prices worldwide. That 2 trillion isn't just a number, it's proof the energy transition is fully underway financially.
Okay, sticking with global economics but shifting focus. Let's look at Nigeria. President Bola Tinubu has been reassuring investors about growth and stability there.
All right, this is all about showing commitment to ongoing reforms. His comments came just after swearing in 2 new ministers, one for humanitarian affairs and poverty reduction, the other for innovation, science, and technology.
So, signaling priorities. What's the next step in their reform plan?
According to the source material, it's about tackling structural barriers head-on.
Like what, specifically?
Things like tariffs, import restrictions, the kind of things that have historically held back domestic production and investment. The plan is to review these, potentially remove some, to really try and spark productivity in key areas.
Which areas are they targeting?
Mining, infrastructure, and digital innovation seem to be the core focus. It's a strategy aimed at using Nigeria's own financial resources more effectively to build sustainable, homegrown growth.
Interesting. Now, let's hop over to Europe. There's this thing called the Brussels Manifesto that's been issued.
Yeah, this came from Europa Nostra, which is a major network focused on cultural heritage. They're essentially lobbying the European Union, urging them to put cultural and natural heritage right at the heart of their next big budget plan.
The multi-annual financial framework, right, the MFF for 2028-2034. That's the EU's long-term spending plan.
Exactly. For you listening, the MFF controls billions of euros over many years. Getting heritage embedded in that framework now basically locks in policy direction and funding for the better part of the next decade. It's strategically vital for them.
But why heritage? Why is that so central to massive EU budget planning?
Their argument, laid out in the manifesto, is pretty compelling. They say that shared European heritage, history, culture, landscapes isn't just nice to have. It's fundamental for democracy and resilience.
How does that work?
The idea is that in times of increasing division or external pressures, that shared identity acts like a glue. It builds community, reinforces democratic values across all the member states. So they're positioning cultural investment as strategic, not just aesthetic. It's about social cohesion.
Makes sense. And just to round out this global picture, a quick note on recent U.S. election results.
Yeah, just a factual summary here. State and local elections saw wins for Democratic candidates, specifically mentioning Mikey Sherrill winning the governorship in New Jersey, and Zohran Mamdani elected mayor of New York City.
Basically confirming existing political patterns in those big urban areas.
Pretty much. A straightforward data point on current political alignments.
Okay. So we've covered a lot of ground the white fast of the news. Domestic stress, global investment shifts, policy moves.
Right. But now we get to, I think, the really fascinating part for you, the listener. Understanding the filter. How this information gets curated, the linguistic controls applied. Basically how the sausage is made.
The aha moment, exactly.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the curation strategy itself.
Well, the first thing you notice if you analyze the whole slate is the intentional balancing act. Risk balancing. The editors deliberately included 3 stories tagged as very low risk.
And these aren't just random feel-good pieces, are they?
Not at all. They serve a structural purpose. You have things like the Aurora Borealis being visible really far south, across maybe 22 U.S. states, a cool, non-controversial science story.
Or positive community news, like accessible solar power in London, or stories about successful regenerative agriculture projects.
Exactly. These stories do a few things. They provide thematic variety, which is important. They offer a bit of mood balancing amidst heavier news. But critically, from an editorial standpoint, they help lower the overall risk average of the entire news package.
Ah, so they help ensure the whole day's slate can be classified as low risk, even with contentious topics included.
Precisely. It's an editorial technique to manage potential audience fatigue and keep people engaged even when covering difficult subjects. It validates the final risk assessment.
Which brings us neatly to the language itself, the idea of mandatory linguistic substitutions. This is where certain words get swapped out, right?
Yes, and this is absolutely key for information integrity, especially in environments where algorithms might penalize sensationalism. News organizations often have strict rules. Replace high-risk, potentially inflammatory terms with neutral procedural ones.
This is the critical thinking tool we really want you to grasp. Knowing why a certain phrase is used changes how you process the news. Can you give us some concrete examples from the vetting report?
Sure. Let's take one we discussed earlier. The term government shutdown. Highly charged. Evokes crisis.
That was forbidden.
Strictly. The required alternatives were U.S. federal funding impasse or maybe fiscal lapses.
And the thinking behind that.
It immediately takes the political heat out.
Yeah.
It forces you to think about the mechanism, the procedural problem, rather than just the political drama or panic. It focuses on function.
Okay, give us another one.
All right. How about assessing policy failures? Instead of using really loaded adversarial terms like moral failure or deadly negligence.
Which you might see in opinion pieces, maybe.
Right. But for vetted news reporting, the approved language would be something like significant policy gaps or urgent policy acceleration required.
Much more neutral.
Completely. It reframes the issue objectively. It's about the policy's effectiveness, the speed needed for adjustment, not about assigning blame in inflammatory ways. It maintains that crucial measured tone.
I think my favorite was the travel one. You can't say flight chaos, or that the situation grips U.S. airports.
Yep. That's deemed unacceptable escalation. Too sensational. The disciplined required terms are operational disruptions or increased travel delays.
It sounds so mundane.
And that's the point. It de-escalates. It frames a serious logistical challenge as essentially a widespread travel inconvenience, not some kind of uncontrolled national breakdown. It shows the editorial rigor involved in delivering high-stakes information responsibly.
So that really brings everything together, doesn't it? We went from the very real stress of that 37-day impasse impacting flights
To the huge global shift shown by that $2 trillion clean energy investment number from COP30.
and then right into the nuts and bolts of how the reporting on all of this is carefully shaped, linguistically managed for balance and integrity.
And the real power here, for you, is seeing those connections and understanding the structure. That 37-day impasse, it directly led to the FAA's 10% flight reduction, the need for faster climate action at COP30. It's backed by that $2 trillion data point showing where the money is actually flowing. Seeing the structure gives you more control over interpreting it all.
So for our final thought today, let's loop back to that Brussels manifesto. The argument was that shared European cultural heritage is vital for democracy and resilience, acting as a kind of social glue.
Right, that it's a strategic element for community well-being.
Okay, so if those softer concepts, heritage and culture, are seen as essential for resilience at the highest levels of EU planning, what's the equivalent unifying force being intentionally placed in the diversification or low-risk part of news curation strategies today?
That's a great question.
Think about those examples we used, the Northern Lights, the community solar projects, the farming stories. What fundamental non-political aspect of human experience are those carefully selected low-risk stories actually meant to reinforce for us, the audience, something to mull over?